Hey, Mike back here with Canadian musician. Right now we're in downtown Toronto, and with me is one of the mainstays, one of the classic bands of Canadian rock, the Northern Pikes. Now out, their newest album, Forest of Love, their first album of new material. It's 16 years is now out. Guys, it's a super solid record. And so congratulations on that, first of all. And before we get into it, there's a bunch of you here, so I'm just going to pass down the mic, and if each of you don't mind just doing a quick introduction.
Okay. Well, I'm Jay Semko, and I play the bass and sing in the Northern Pikes.
I'm Don Schmidt, and I'm the drummer in the Northern Pikes.
I'm Kevin Kane. I play guitar and I sing. I'm the new guy.
I'm Brian Potvin. I sing, I play guitar, and I'm an old guy.
I should have mentioned, if anyone's needing an introduction, like I said, Northern Pikes are one of the classic Canadian rock bands. Their classic albums, Big Blue Sky and Snow in June. I keep using the word classic, but it seems fitting here. But their iconic songs like Teenland, She Ain't Pretty, the name's escaping me. What You Do for Money? Am I getting that? Things I Do for Money. Sorry, I can be really bad with song titles. But like I said, new album, Force of Love. Their first album since of new material, I guess. Since 2003, there was the big reissue of Big Blue Sky a couple years ago, for which I talked to you, Don, at the time. But guys, how does it feel to be back with a new album, or at least writing new material, performing new material after this long? Because of course you guys have been active in the intervening period, but what was it like getting back into the writing process, the recording process again?
Oh, it was really fun. I mean, I guess the genesis for doing a new recording was on the Big Blue Sky 30th anniversary tour. It was in the fall of 2017, and we took a tour of Studio Bell at the National Music Center in Calgary, and it was there was just so many cool things about it in terms of the number of different rooms. The main room for recording we could all potentially set up and record live off the floor, and a lot of vintage instruments, and it just had a great vibe. So that kind of was the first catalyst that kind of got us thinking about doing that. But I mean, asking what it feels like, it's great. I mean, we're a band of songwriters, and there's a really cool thing that happens when we all connect together, when we all work together as musicians and artists, and you can't duplicate that. It's just a really unique sensation. And I mean, this is, for me personally, this is one of my favorite recording experiences I think I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah. We went in and we were very concise, where our goal was to record a song a day, cut it live off the floor, and obviously do some overdubs, etc. And we stayed pretty close to that, really. We were, so, sometimes having a little bit of a deadline and to be going there specifically on a mission. And the cool thing about going to Calgary in some ways, I think, psychologically, was the fact that none of us live there. So we're all away from home. We're all there focused on this one thing that we're trying to do, which is make a new record.
It's one of the things when you have multi-person interviews, you're never sure if anyone wants to add something. When did the writing process for the new batch of songs, like over the last 60 years, I guess this is really a question for you, Jay, but well, I shouldn't assume that because I don't know what the writing process was for the new album. But have these songs been accumulating over the last 16 years, and then you decided, you had the motivation to get in the studio again as a band, or essentially were these songs written for this project?
Yeah, well, speaking for myself, I just came in with some skeletons of songs, and some of them I was even kind of working on the night before we had a session set to do something new. And some of them came in various stages of completion. I know sometimes the guys, had done some pretty good demos before. The thing is, we've all been consistently writing music and recording new music, So in various forms other than the Northern Pikes. So I think our writing chops are up there. And I think the most unique and fun part about this particular recording was the fact that it was a total collaboration. I didn't want to go in with songs that were too finished, because I really value these guys as musicians and creators and editors, for that matter, because they all know songs really well, and sometimes I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to my song ideas in terms of that. So it's nice to be able to get the opinion and co-production of the rest of the guys.
Yeah, Kevin and I made a record in, was it 16? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
In called Kane and Pot, creative title. And we had continued writing after the recording of that record, anticipating on possibly doing a follow-up to that album. And then the Pikes got busy, and we decided to go in to make Forest of Love. And so Kevin and I had some stuff laying about that fit this project really well. So yeah, we had some semi-complete demos.
Yeah, we had close to an album written, and then we just kind of looked at it and what songs might be pikey. Like we played them for Jay and Don, and that's how we set out doing it. But it varied from song to song. Even though we had finished demos of songs, we're still completely rewriting lyrics and changing arrangements and changing keys and all of that stuff. And one thing to sort of keep in mind too with the studio, we did a song a day, but they weren't like finished songs that we then went and learned, and then all we had to do was go in and perform them. We were writing, arranging, tweaking, learning, and getting keeper takes all in the same day. So I think for me it was a pretty I think for all of us it was a pretty rare experience in how fast and painless it was.
I'll put my 2 cents in. I didn't write any of the songs, and being the drummer in the band, it was very interesting because to me, some great recordings are of the moment. They're not really thought about for months and months on end. You don't demo them. It's just basically a live performance. And that's what all these songs really are. They came in, some a little organized, some not at all. And like the last song, Don't You Give Up, was basically the four of us composed it the night before we went in and recorded it. And it's interesting because it's really just your first thoughts. You didn't have enough time to think about it. It was done the next day. So that is rare for us. Most of our records, with the exception of It's a Good Life, were very, they were demoed, they were thought about for months before, and we really had a good idea of what we wanted to do before we went in and did the formal recording of it. And Jay and I shared a room, Kevin and Brian shared a room, and they were right beside each other. So it was interesting when Jay was working on King and His Castle, and I was filming him in the room, and he's writing and putting lyrics down. And the next morning we'd go to Brian and Kevin and say, Jay's got a song. And he said, we know, we heard it already through the room. So they kind of knew what was going on. Yeah. So it was cool. It was a good arrangement. Yeah.
The fact that all of you are saying like this is one of the easiest recording processes of your respective careers, is that a matter of age and experience? You're more sure of yourselves as musicians, as writers, as performers, more sure of what you want going into the studio, you're more sure of what you want from the album, or is it just happenstance or coincidence? Know what I mean? Like, what leads to this being an easier process?
Well, I think experience for sure. I think, speaking for myself, and I think the other guys too, I think we've all just gotten better as musicians. Mm-hmm. Plus, we've all done, between us, we've recorded a lot of songs and a lot of albums over a long period of time. And it really comes down to performance at the end of it all. I mean, yes, you can use technology to your advantage to assist you, but nothing beats really the core performance of what's going on in terms of your musical performance or vocal performance or whatever. So, I think it's a combination of a bunch of those things.
I think we've gotten better as arrangers, which is an interesting part of songwriting because quite often you'll record a piece of music and you might have to edit like 3 parts of it out or change it or loop choruses or something. So we've really, I think all 4 of us gotten really good at knowing what a song needs. And sometimes all these songs are really quite short with the exception of Will Over Will. And even that's not even that long, I think 4.5 minutes. Yeah. So it's a short record. It's 32 minutes, 10 songs, 32 minutes. So
we did the record in 2 sessions. They were roughly 6 or 7 days each, and I remember we cut a tune called Juliana in the first week, and we're listening to it for several months before going back to cut the second session, the second batch of tunes, and that song needed a bridge. It just didn't have one. So with the magic of digital recording now, we could sort of go inside this thing, insert a bridge. But it gave us the luxury of time to sort of, again, like Don was saying, to arrange, to make sure that the tunes are arranged properly. And, it's hard to, for anybody to do that in real time. Like your clock is ticking and you're actually arranging on the spot. Sometimes you do need a little bit of a window to reflect back and have a look at stuff. And we were able to make a few changes, fortunately, because we actually did it in two legs. So that was advantageous, certainly, to have the a rest period in between the two legs of recording.
Kevin, what was it like for you coming into this band, particularly coming into this writing and recording space? Because I believe you've been performing with the guys for a few years before the album. Yeah. Since the Big Blue Sky reissue performances. But it's a different thing entering the studio with a band for the first time. I'm sure playing live kind of helps ease the process. I can't remember if I mentioned, of course, you're with Grapes of Wrath, another classic Canadian rock band. But what was it like for you finding your role, finding your space with a new band in the studio?
I don't know if I looked at it in terms of it being something that had to be defined. I didn't think, I've got to be this guy, whatever. So I was just kind of there, to offer whatever I could, which I ended up playing more keyboards than I think I've ever played on a record, because it was just like, you go play it. So, I mean, in terms of working with these guys, they were incredibly welcoming. In the very first song we recorded was one that I sang. So, and that was the first day in the studio. By the end of the day, I think it was like 5 minutes to 9, we actually had a keeper take of Canada Boy, and that's what we used on the record, live off the floor. Like, we kept the guitar tracks. So, for me, it's pretty exciting because of how well the three of these guys already work together, and how easy it was for me to just kind of slide into that ecosystem and be a part of the process. And things went so fast because we were working off of intuition much of the time. You do you work on a song, you play it through 2-3 times, and then you gotta be really honest with yourself. What's working and what isn't working, and how do we make it work?
Actually, just to return to something you said earlier, you used the word in describing the kind of bringing together the group of songs for this album. I believe when you said you were looking at the songs that you guys had, and you used the word like, I believe you said, what songs do we have that are pikey? What songs kind of fall into your guys' sound?
I think more energetic.
As I say, like in listening to this album, it sounds like a Northern Pikes record, and I mean that in the greatest way. Like, kind of your guys' sound is right up my alley, and that's guitar-driven rock and roll, but that has real kind of melodic pop sensibilities to it as well. In saying that, in making this album, was knowing your sound, trying to make something that sounds pikey, like you put it. Was that a conscious thing? Was that something that you guys thought about, or is that just, that's who you are? Know what I mean?
I don't think so. For me, it wasn't a conscious thing. I just thought, let's write some good songs and work on them together and see what happens. And I think you can't help it. It's an organic thing. You can't really help but be who you are within your songs. And the nice thing about having done this a lot is, well, first of all, it's not like not like every take's perfect or anything, no matter how many times you've recorded things. But the nice thing is there's always that little bit of butterflies going on when you go to cut something and it's live. And also there's that unknown factor of what's it going to be. It was really super fun for me to go and hear, play me one of your demos, you guys, that you guys are really like, and they would play one, and it was like really good, and it's like, yeah, this is cool, and so we'd really just kind of juggled it around. The egos were checked at the door, and it really became a four-way co-write, and everybody's part was intrinsic to that particular song. And one thing that's really cool is that Kevin does play keyboards, and he's a multi-instrumental talented guy that way, and he's also a singer too. So, and us as having played live as a trio for a number of years and not really gone in the studio, all of a sudden you've got this fourth person there, and it's like, oh, I remember what that's like. You've got a third vocalist and other guitar parts and that kind of thing, and Kevin is just great. He's great. We couldn't have had anybody better, and no, but I'm not trying to butter him up either. I just kind of, he just is. He's great. He's a great musician. Yeah, we just let him rip, It's just like, it was just very natural. I could call this in many ways the most organic of all the records I think I've done. It everything just kind of worked. And yes, there is effort being put in. Nothing's ever completely easy, but when it comes down to getting together with a group of other creators of music and being able to throw your ideas around, man, it just felt really good. Seemed totally natural, and everybody seemed, we each found our little home in the studio, you know?
And maybe the next one won't be this easy. You know, maybe this was our easy record. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but that's kind of how it felt. There was a flow, and at any point when somebody was working on something, like if one person's doing an overdub with Graham, who's the engineer, you know, somebody else is working on lyrics, somebody else is working on something else, Don's editing video. It's like there was a constant, it was a real beehive of activity.
Sorry, what's the video component? You say Don was editing video. Were you?
Yeah, well, I think all of the artwork is done by all four of us. Like, we all have phones, which are basically cameras.
Let's just clarify.
Oh, sorry. What did I say? Artwork? Yeah. Sorry, that's not true. Yes, all the photography for the artwork was done by the band, and I've always just loved photos and videos, and so I was always shooting different things. I've just put a camera on a tripod and let it go for a couple of hours and pick 8 seconds that you like, and so we have a good collection now of the making of this record, which goes into our archives. We've had a camera in the band since 1987, and hundreds of hours of all sorts of things, shenanigans on the road, and so that's, I just have a great interest in that, and as the guys are singing or playing parts, I'd run in there and grab candid shots, and the next video that we're putting out for Don't You Give Up was basically, I did shakers and a tambourine in the song, so not a whole lot of playing, but I filmed it, which was really cool, and got the actual footage of the tracks as they went down between the three of them. So that's cool. Yeah. That's right.
So I know we have to wrap up soon, but there's one last thing I want to ask about, which is releasing an album in 2019 for the first time in 16 years. Obviously, when you released your last new album or album of new material in 2003, it was a very different industry. I guess you could say that was in the wake of Napster. This one's in the wake of Spotify and such. I don't know if it's you guys would, if it matters as much to you at this stage in your career as compared to like a new band or that kind of thing. But like, how does this album release strategy? How does releasing an album essentially in the streaming era compare, better or worse, pros and cons compared to the pre-digital era, the post-Napster era and such? You know what I mean?
Things are a lot more instant right now, and I think also for myself anyway, it's a learning curve. I mean, the last album of brand new Northern Pikes material was released 16 years ago, which is a long time ago in terms of technology and what's going on there. So, and we're learning things. I mean, we're getting, yes, it has changed a lot, but there's many positives about that too, in terms of the music can be more in the hands of the listener, and it gives them more choice in some ways too.
I'll pass it to Brian.
We're working with a strategist right now who told us that he visits as many tech conferences as he does music conferences. Yeah, that is his forte, and in his belief that that's how a record is promoted these days is online. There's always going to be a physical component to music, and it's interesting watching vinyl with this resurgence. For our particular fan base, it's an interesting addition to the merchandise table and an offering, because a lot of our fan base know what records are, and some of them may even have turntables at home, but it's catering to the listener now. It seems to be that point. That's the situation. The end user has a way of bringing music into their lives, and you've got to present it to them in that fashion if you want to be heard. So, yeah. Anything?
Well, sure. I'd say now it's a lot easier to have your music heard. Back then, it's, oh, do you hear that new album? No, I haven't gone out and bought it yet. You'd have to get into your car, go out to a store, hope they had it, buy it.
Or why would I hear it if it wasn't on the radio?
Yeah. And even then, you're going to hear one song. So, like now, I hear more new music than I've ever heard in my life because of streaming and whatnot. Now, one thing that puts a band like this into a luckier position is we are a heritage act. So, there's a long history for this band, and that means that we're able to get certain types of bookings, like festivals and larger shows that allow us to play these songs in front of a bunch of people all at once. And for somebody starting out now, they don't have that advantage. So, I'm definitely keenly aware of that.
I'm loving the streaming, really.
As a music listener,
Yeah, as a music listener and as a musician as well. I mean, the royalties aren't quite the same as they once were when you sold physical product, but I mean, you just have to go with technology. How can you can't really fight it as an individual person.
Actually, I have a secret to tell people. Grapes of Wrath never made a penny off record sales. That's 2 platinum albums, or no, 1 platinum, 2 gold records. We never made a penny. Yeah, recoupables. It was all live. And that's the same for now.
Yeah, the
So it
cost
hasn't changed.
to make records in those days, like nobody, I don't think, I shouldn't say nobody, but not many are spending that kind of money. We spent more on catering for Snow in June than probably the last 3 records we did all combined. And that's without a word of a lie. We spent a lot of months in Bearsville, New York, and we had a cook with 5-course meal every night. And in those days, in the late 80s, I mean, recording budgets and video budgets, Shane Pretty was very expensive to make with the claymation in that video. But that helped that record go gold in like a month. So everything has changed greatly since then.
Just a quick yes/no. Is Snow in June going to get the big reissue treatment as well? Nice. That's good to hear. Next year. It's good to hear. Anyways, guys, new album, Force of Love, from the Northern Pikes is now. It's a classic album. If you like, if you like their previous stuff, you're going to love this album. It's just a classic, Northern Pikes sounding record, and I mean that in a great way. So congratulations, guys, on making such a good album, and thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Cheers. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you.